Social music talk. Let me ask you a question. I thought, because this is what the industry said from everyone I talked with besides Ed Stolz, that he signed a letter of intent in February 1996 to sell KWOD to Entercom. A letter of intent.
That's it. I've seen. You could talk to all the industry people you want, Alex. I was there. I was in the courtroom. I was in the depositions. He was starting a new station in Palm Springs, KRCK,
which I worked for eventually for
I'd
6 months.
I'd get a call saying I had to fly back to Sacramento to go to a deposition. I was about ready to leave one night. I was going to go. One of my vacations was going to go to Europe. And Ed comes into my office. I'm getting all ready to go to Europe, and Ed comes into my office at 9 o'clock at night saying, "I need you to be at the law offices of so and so." And I go, "Ed, I'm going to Europe. I fly out tomorrow to go to Venice." And he goes, "Sorry, bro." So I had to postpone my trip by 2 days. And that back then you had travel agents and be in a deposition. So what had happened was they said, "No, we've got this letter of intent. You signed it. And so here's $25 million. And he goes, "No, that's not the deal. The deal was I was going to have a radio station at the end of the day, not $25 million. And that's where the fight.
What was Live 105 worth at that time?
Well, at the time they did a straight across trade. So
No. They were worth a lot more than KWOD. If KWOD was valued at $25 million, they were worth a lot more than that.
Well, again, you'd have to go and look and find out what Entercom sold CBS to.
So I understand what you're saying. Except that what I had heard was that the deal was Live One, according to Ed, a Live 105 plus some Midwest station.
See, I never knew anything about that.
See, Ed, that's what Ed told me when I worked for him in Palm Springs.
Well, again, the thing is, you got industry, you got Entercom side of the story, you got Ed Stolz side of the story,
right?
And then you got me, kind of a neutral party.
Right, I'm neutral too. Other than I collect a lot of information for my radio music website, Playlist Research, which is where this interview ends up on. And so it has a ton of historic radio data on it, and I only care about accurate information. So that's why I ask questions, because I'm not going to go just by what Ed Stolz tells me or what even what I read in the trades, I mean, I like to cut through the crap and find out what really happened. So you're telling me based on what Ed Stolz told you, right? Plus the court documentation.
I'm talking about what Ed Stolz told me. I was in probably 12 depositions from 96 till the day it went to 2003. Some of these depositions went 8, 9, 10 hours. So I got fielded a lot of questions from Entercom's attorneys. I fielded a lot of questions with the paperwork that Entercom's attorneys gave to me, and also fielded a lot of questions that Ed's attorneys fielded to me as well. And that's why, and I think in my involvement, why Ed wanted the hearing to be moved to Washington, D.C. is as my years progressed at KWOD and my responsibilities to the point where I became general manager, I had to be involved in, Ed was involved in a lot of court cases.
Yeah, I've counted them.
And I think the judge, and he had, I'm going to choose my words carefully. Ed had taken advantage of the legal system and the courts for a long time.
Right. So they ruled again. They said that he had to put up $150,000 bond for every case that he filed, since he was considered a frivolous litigant, something like that. Or he filed too many frivolous lawsuits in California, and that's the second time it ever happened in this state.
Yeah, and I think the judges, he had used KWOD as a vehicle to kind of take advantage of the legal system for a long time. I think these judges said, "We got him. We're going." He's used this radio station to not manipulate. That's the wrong word. We're gonna take away that power from him. We don't want to see this guy in our courtroom ever again.
I get it. Yeah, that's what I had heard too.
And the funny thing is, and this is my true belief, and I'll be honest here, I was in a lot of court cases for Ed. Some cases we won that we shouldn't have won, but we did. And I think it kind of goes with karma. The one case where he was right, to this day I still think he was right. That the one at the end of the day, the one that he lost was the most important one. Mm-hmm. You know, who cares about all these little frivolous lawsuits he's had over the years? Mm-hmm. The one big one where he was actually right, and I'm not saying that the other ones he was in was wrong, but like I said, there was some ones like I can't believe we won that lawsuit. You know, mm-hmm. Where I think he kind of got his comeuppance.
Well, then, in your opinion, that letter of intent that he signed to sell KWOD to Entercom, that was not a deal?
The way that I got it from talking to Ed and then talking to Ed's attorneys, that all that letter was is they had to put a monetary figure on KWOD so the broker could get, and I don't know how they were going to give the money to the broker, but they had to put a value, because a broker who handles brokers a radio station deal, if it's a trade deal, they're not getting anything out of it. Mm. So he had to get a percentage of what his deal would have been on a cash deal. And that contract was to put a cash value on KWOD, so the percentage of that would become his commission on the deal. That's all it was for.
Okay, but it still sounds like Ed was trying to make a deal to sell KWOD. I mean, it's hard to believe that. I guess it's hard to believe his story, knowing how many cases he's lost. But
well, here, you've known Ed longer than I have.
Yeah.
You really, Ed's life was radio.
Mm-hmm.
Do you really think that he wanted to give up that life?
It was always his baby when I worked for him.
Yes, and his thing was, I don't want to buy. He goes, I'm not trying to sell radio stations. He goes, I'm trying to buy. He had his whole thing with what ended up becoming KROC in Los Angeles in the '70s, where he owned the license. And other guy
right, but that station was dark.
Yeah.
And then when he finally put those call letters to use in Palm Springs, KROC made him stop using the KROC moniker. He wasn't allowed to use that.
We were I remember it was an 80 station. We were the rock of the 80s.
Yeah.
Which I told him that format was, but he wanted to do that.
Yeah, right. That's what he loved, the 80s.
Yeah, well, and also K-Rock.
Mm-hmm.
But, I mean, look at him today. He owns 3 radio stations in Palm Springs. He owns a 3 in Las Vegas, mm-hmm. 1 in Palm Springs,
San Francisco.
And 1 in San Francisco.
Except they all have low ratings.
Well, and they're not making any money either. But,
right.
He did not want to. He didn't want the money. He wanted the station.
Yeah, I understand that. He loves radio and he lives and breathes radio, and he himself doesn't seem to be that in tune with the content on the radio. Like, it's not, he can't sit there and tell you who the artists are or the songs that he heard, but he likes the prestige of radio.
You knew him. He loved being Ed Stolz, the owner of KWOD.
Right, being seen at nightclubs,
Get the babe. and knowing, and Ed has a degree of integrity to him, Alex. I don't think he would have sold KWOD for $200 million.
Well, the interesting thing, though, is he signed it the month Bill Clinton signed the Telecom Act, which skyrocketed the valuations of radio stations.
Sure.
Eventually, like within the next few years, then they all dropped again. So that
right.
act, Telecom, that just shortly after Clinton signed that, which handed radio over to big biz. Pretty much Ed signed that deal, letter of intent, and so that's why the timing's weird. And then when valuations started to move up by '97, he backs out of what's called the deal by a lot of industry people.
Alex, I was in the office with Ed before this deal. Entercom wanted KWOD almost at any cost. And I remember they had this one broker and this one representative, and I was sitting in the corner of Ed's office, and this guy was clicking his pen constantly. Click, 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 click. They were coming to Ed with new offers weekly. And he kept saying, I don't want, he goes, I'm trying to get into the radio business, not trying to get things sell. He goes, I'm a buyer, not a seller. And I remember it was the same thing he first said to me. When they offered him the deal for Live 105 for KWOD, he goes, now you're speaking my language.
Okay, what's interesting, though, is Entercom now owns what was KWOD and Live 105, which is Alt 105.
Right. Yeah. I mean, now in years later, because CBS sold all their properties, and Entercom bought a lot of them. Bonneville bought a lot of them. You know, it was a feeding frenzy. To this, you know, and I've spoken to Ed a couple of years ago. I'll get another funny story if you don't want to talk about it. But I lost my train of thought.
About a funny story going back with Entercom, maybe? Well, how about...
No, now I remember. Because of the whole for the 107.9, the KDND thing, that license eventually is going to go up for auction. If I was Ed, I would try to buy the... I mean,
well, yeah, it's the end of the dial. It's not far from where KWOD was.
Yeah. Entercom had to give up that because when Entercom bought half of CBS's properties, they were over the limit in Sacramento, so they had to dump some to Bonneville, and then they finally figured, we're not going to do this fight anymore for 107.9. We'll just make it dark. And that station eventually, that license is going to be up for auction.
Well, do you know when that will be?
Pardon?
Do you know when that will be?
I have no idea. I'm surprised it hasn't happened yet.
Okay.
The FCC, you know, there's been, again, the groups I'm working for with Prophecy Radio Group, Prophecy Media Group, Mad River Radio, Bill McCutcheon, half the stations we bought that we have now were stations that came up for auction.
Okay.
And there was a period, I would say about 5 years ago, where licenses were coming up for auction everywhere, and I'm surprised that the 107.9 has not come for auction yet.
Well,
but it will.
It's worth bringing up. I'm not trying to say this is why it's dark still, but that was the station with the water drinking death that became nationally known on the news back in 2009 or 2007 maybe?
Yeah, something about that.
And this contestant, you know, the station was responsible for the water drinking death because of this contest to drink the most water, and this lady died from it. So their family won like $34 million off of it. So the end, there, and I'm talking about like what you just said, KDND, the end in Sacramento. That was the nationally reported story about the water drinking death, and I think they gave it a dark cloud over that station. And I'm just bringing that up because I thought that was the most horrible thing that's ever happened in radio. Social music.